Anyway. Tetris versus
Endless
the real
video
story.
game adaptations comes the true story of one of the world's best-selling video games. Apple's Tetris takes us on a wild journey following the guy who played Elton John into the depths of Soviet Russia. So in this video we'll be separating fact from fiction and comparing the movie and its characters to what really happened. So grab some vodka and let me blow your cartridge because this is one wild ride. Meet Hank Rogers, the owner of Bulletproof Software, who discovered Tetris at the 1988 Winter Consumer Electronics Expo in Las Vegas.
After this, I will look at the Barbie. Dude, shut the fuck up. After this, I will look at the stupid fucking Barbie trailer. Oh my god. Just hold on.
Nevada. After playing, he was immediately hooked and was put in contact with its exhibitor, Britain's Maxwell Communications. This is where Robert Maxwell comes in, the company's founder and chairman, who also happens to be the father of infamous child abuser Ghislaine Maxwell. So basically a family of upstanding citizens. You'll notice some of the characters, including Russian leader Mikhail Gorbachev, refer to him as a politician. That's because Robert Maxwell was a member of British Parliament from 1964 to 1970. Some of the more confusing aspects of the Tetris movie is who owned the rights to the game, what—
Yeah, he was more than just a politician. He was also a spy. Anyway, but that's, I guess, not a separate story. This is the story. Dua Lipa's and Barbie. Remember when I said, you know, I'm finalizing getting a puppy and it's making me feel so good that it's like I'm letting chat's annoyance like wash over me. It's becoming increasingly more and more difficult to just fucking let it slide. I am having such a hard time. I'm not gonna lie. You guys did it. You did it. You are succeeding.
what those rights entail, and how all this worked during the backdrop of the Cold War. The game was created by Alexei Pajitnov in 1984 when he was working at the Soviet Academy of Science in Moscow. During this time, with rare exceptions, intellectual property was owned by the state and not the individual, so the rights for the game were transferred to a state-run organization called Elektronorgtechnika, or ELORG for short. This was the organization responsible for managing computer software exports from the Soviet Union. In comes Robert Stein. Think of this guy like a video game leech. He'd travel all over the USSR looking for good games, purchase the rights from ELORG, and then resell those rights to distributors across the globe. Now, when you buy these rights, you can choose to purchase them for a specific platform, such as a computer, an arcade, or a console like the NES. Where things get hairy is the introduction of the Game Boy, which, under the wording of ELORG's contract with Mr. Stein, doesn't technically qualify as a PC, console, or arcade. It's in its own category called handheld, which we'll get into in a bit. Second, Mr. Stein greatly misinterpreted ELORG's contract, thinking that his right to distribute Tetris on, quote, different types of computers included home consoles. So ELORG gives a 10-year worldwide PC Tetris license to Robert Stein, who then sublicenses it to Mirrorsoft, run by Kevin and Robert Maxwell. Mirrorsoft then sublicenses that to Atari for US distribution and Hank Rogers for Japanese distribution. So you can already see how things are starting to get confusing. But when Hank goes to ELORG showing off a copy of a Japanese console version of Tetris, director Nikolai Belikov is perplexed. ELORG never gave anyone the Tetris rights to consoles, only PC and arcade. This goes back to Mr. Stein's misinterpretation of their contract, and later Stein will sign an amended
Misinterpretation. Simply a misinterpretation, you know.
agreement clarifying that consoles such as Famicom and NES are different from PCs. So in the late 1980s, when Hank was selling Tetris on Famicoms in Japan, they too were technically illegal copies. But there was a bigger problem. Initial sales of Tetris in Japan were weak at best, so Hank goes to president of Nintendo, Hiroshi Yamauchi, to see if they can be of any help. Hank and Hiroshi knew each other after Nintendo helped develop his Go video game, the same game we see him trying to hawk at the beginning of the movie. Because of their history, Hiroshi gives Tetris to a game designer by the name of Shigeru Miyamoto. Yes, the Shigeru Miyamoto, the creator of Mario and Zelda. Shigeru loved the game so much, and Nintendo ends up releasing Tetris on the Famicom in 1988, where it quickly becomes the console's best-selling game of all time. Now here is where things get even.
So, yeah, there is so much back and forth, like international patent, IP, distribution rights, ping pong in this entire fucking process in the real world as well, as they are correctly pointing out. I think one of the funnier aspects is that if Nintendo was not involved in this process, I think the U.S. courts would have fucking allowed Sega to just like run train on that IP without giving anybody money, really. I don't even know how the fuck Sega got the rights. I'm pretty sure they just literally didn't even buy them at all. They just basically decided to fucking run with it, like, and sell it.
And more crazy, Hank is invited to meet Minoru Arakawa, the president of Nintendo America, and get a glimpse of their new Game Boy handheld console. At the time, Nintendo wasn't sure which game they should package with Game Boy, and it was actually Hank who suggested Tetris. Even the line from the movie where he says, if you include Mario, the Game Boy will be for little boys, but if you include Tetris, the game will be for everybody, is said to be almost word for word. Hank goes to Mr. Stein to obtain the worldwide handheld rights, but soon finds out that Stein doesn't have them, resulting in, and yes, this is true, Hank, Kevin Maxwell, and Mr. Stein descending upon Moscow all at the same time to sort this fiasco out. A fiasco which has millions at stake. Now, Hank did hire a translator and, against protocol, went to Elorg to ask for a meeting and only got one because Belikov was curious and having another bidder would only sweeten the pot. Unlike the movie, however, was this translator Sasha, who was a KGB spy. That never happened, nor his wife Akemi being threatened at their office in Japan. All of that was added for extra drama. While the movie suggests Belikov was roughed up by the KGB, all we really know is that he was closely kept an eye on by Soviet authorities and even had his files reviewed. Gorbachev did keep an eye on Belikov's negotiations, but as the film lays out, the General Secretary of the Communist Party was too busy keeping his country together to worry about the sale of a video game. Now, the film highly dramatizes this race against time as the various parties fight to gain their rights, but in reality it was a far more civil matter. Elorg chose the company that was willing to pay the most, and yes, Kevin Maxwell tried to offer them encyclopedias in exchange for the game, thinking the Russians weren't interested in money, but rather an exchange of intellectual properties. Alas, there was no KGB officer by the name of Valentin Trifonov who attempted to extort Robert Maxwell in exchange for the Tetris rights. Rather, his character is more a metaphor for the greed and corruption that bloated the Soviet Union at the time.
And I do think that this was, well, first of all, that's an interesting analysis. I do agree that this metaphor is correct. It's just like in collaboration. No, that's not the Red Scare. No, guys, these motherfuckers literally exist. They're still in power. Like, what do you mean? Vladimir Putin is this guy, okay? Vladimir Putin is literally this guy. Like, there are many guys like this guy. They all own the fucking... You're so wrong. Okay, shut up, Altbeam. I hate this chat so much right now. I haven't talked about the Clarence Thomas thing yet. Like, current present Russian oligarchs that control almost all of the industry are guys that were, people that rose through the ranks of the party and basically sold off the wealth of the USSR piece by piece to Western bankers and Western capitalists and Western oligarchs. They did that. So that metaphor is technically correct. That metaphor is not wrong. Okay? So understand that. There's no distinction between this guy and the larger Soviet Union. He's meant to represent communism. That's all I'm saying. It's true that the collapse involved despotic crooks stripping the USSR piece by piece. No. You missed the other part. The Elorg guy I think they even make Gorbachev look good in this, which I don't even agree with. First of all, they present this guy as a dude that's like somehow worse than Gorbachev when he was like basically doing everything under the behest of Gorbachev. If it was more historically accurate, it would be conducted under the reign and under the watchful eyes of that of the administration at the time. So the El-Org guy, who legitimately did change the contracts out to fuck over Robert Maxwell and Robert Stein, that guy is a real dude. I forget what his name is. Okay? I don't remember what his name is, but that's a real dude that worked at El-Org at the time, and he did end up defending like USSR's best interests, and even Alexei and Hank Rogers. That part is actually real. So I think that they showcase that very well. They showcase that distinction very well.
Time. So not only did Hank Rogers leave the USSR with the handheld rights for Nintendo, but because of the misunderstanding over the definition of what a computer is, he also got Nintendo the console rights, which led to a legal dispute with Atari, who at the time was publishing Tetris on their consoles. This would later be resolved in court in Nintendo's favor. The film also depicts a budding friendship.
Why is chat extra feral today? Did something happen? Like, I can't help but notice that, like, chat's being, like, extra weird today. I don't know what it is. They always attack you, man. Is it the way I don't know if it's the way I'm receiving it, whereas normally I would just, like, let it wash over and just not focus on it, but I don't know what the fuck it is. Like, a lot of you motherfuckers are like rabid dogs in the chat currently, and I don't know what the fuck that's about. It's like extra stinky.
Between Hank and Tetris's creator, Alexei, which is true to real life. The two hung out, and Alexei even took him out drinking and gave him a tour of Moscow. For 13 years after its creation, Alexei didn't receive a cent for his work on Tetris. It was only until El-Org became a private company and the Tetris rights expired that Hank and Alexei joined together to buy 50% of the Tetris rights, with Nikolai Belikov purchasing the other 50%. Then, 10 years later, in 2005, Belikov would sell his half, giving Hank and Alexei full ownership of the game. The film also shows Alexei and his family moving to America, which is true. Hank helped Alexei immigrate to Seattle in 1991, where he later founded his own software company called Animatech. A happy ending, however, cannot be said for all our characters. Robert Maxwell, while on trial for stealing hundreds of millions from his company's pension funds, mysteriously died after years.
Yeah, did he fall? Did he jump? I wonder what happened to Robert Maxwell. How did he die? I'm going to make a lock right now. I don't know if this is a cliche already. Here's my lock. The Barbie movie is Joker for homosexuals. And you are just as fucking unbearable as the straight white dudes that love Joker. Okay? The Barbie movie and its reception is literally just the Joker. What Joker is to straight white guys, the Barbie movie is to women and the gays. Just as unbearable.
Urinating off the side of his yacht, falling into the water, experiencing a heart attack, and drowning. Although some have speculated this could have been suicide or he was offed by international assassins. As stated in the film, Hank's daughter Maya, who we see throughout the story, became CEO of Tetris Company, while Hank has focused much of his time on several community and sustainability-oriented organizations. So while Tetris may not be 100% true to life, for a story that mostly deals with contracts, it found a way to be pretty entertaining. I hope you enjoyed this video.